welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making Manchester Tart. This is a request I had from somebody who remembers having Manchester Tart for school dinners as their dessert, and I remember it as well many years ago. And basically it's a pastry crust which is filled with a layer of raspberry jam and then a layer of thick set custard, and on top of that, and actually in it if you want, is some desiccated coconut. Now I could make the custard using eggs and milk as you would normally do, but I'm sure that for school dinners they didn't use hundreds and hundreds of eggs to make custards for the children. They would have used custard powder. So that's what I'm going to do today. Now I should also say that you can, if you want, use shop-bought shortcrust pastry, which is readily available in the UK, and you can just buy that and use it. But I'm going to make my own shortcrust pastry today, and then the quick version of the custard using the custard powder. So for the ingredients, I have pastry first. I have 300 grams, which is 2 cups plus about 3.5 tablespoons of flour. I have 25 grams of icing sugar, and that works out at about 3 tablespoons. I have 150 grams of chilled butter, which I've cut into cubes, and that is 1 stick plus 3 tablespoons, or 2.5 tablespoons probably. I have the yolks of 2 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA. Now, for the custard and the filling, I have raspberry jam, and I'm going to use about 3 tablespoons of that. That's to taste. You put in as much as you want, really. I have 1 imperial pint of milk. That's 568 millilitres. Now, an imperial pint, a UK pint, is bigger than an American pint. So 568 millilitres, which is 1 imperial pint, is 1 US pint plus 6 tablespoons. I have 60 grams, 3.5 tablespoons of custard powder, and the custard powder comes in the UK. You can get it in sachets, or you can buy it in little cartons like this. Now 60 grams, as I said, is 3.5 tablespoons. That's because I want this to be quite thick. Normally when you make a pint of custard you only use 2 tablespoons. Then I have 30 grams, 5 tablespoons of desiccated coconut. That's unsweetened. I have 50 grams, 1/4 of a cup of caster sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now I'm going to put the custard ingredients to one side just for the moment, so that we can make the pastry. And to make the pastry, I'm just going to put the icing sugar into the flour. And you can do this by hand in a large bowl. You can rub the flour and the sugar into the butter into the flour and the sugar. But I'm actually going to do it in this immersion blender. And I'm going to put the flour in first of all, and then on with the sugar, and then I'm going to put the butter in as well. Whoops. Now I do have some ice cold water ready, should I need that after I've added the egg yolks, but hopefully I won't need that. So what I want to do is to blitz this until I reach sort of fine breadcrumb like texture. And that looks quite good. I'm not going to put my hand in that bowl because of the blade, but that looks as though it's mixed quite well. I'll just go down to the bottom. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the egg yolks. So I'm just going to break those up first of all. I'm going to pour that in, and I'm going to blitz that again until it starts to clump. And if it's not clumping sufficiently, I will add a little drop of water, maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon at a time, until I get the right consistency. So we'll have a look. It's beginning to come together, but it still needs a little bit. So I'm just going to add in about 2 teaspoons of water. So that's clumping together well enough now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip that out onto my counter. Like that. And I'm going to use my hand just to knead that into a nice dough without working it too much. As you can see, just a squeeze brings it together very easily. I will have more dough than I need in all probability, but that's good. I can use the offcuts for something else later. So what I'm going to do is simply cover that in plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it for 30 minutes. And while it's chilling, I'm going to preheat my oven to 190 degrees Celsius, that's 170 degrees Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit, and I have greased a 9-inch 23 to 24 centimetre loose bottomed tart tin, and I have some parchment paper ready, and I have some baking beans ready, or you could use rice, so that we can blind bake the pastry. So I'll be back in 30 minutes when the oven is preheated and the pastry has chilled, and we'll roll it out and blind bake it. So our pastry has chilled for 30 minutes, and I have the oven preheating to 170 Celsius with a fan, 190 Celsius without the fan, 375 Fahrenheit. And now I'm going to roll the pastry out. I've lightly floured my work surface, and I'm going to roll this out probably to a thickness of about a quarter of an inch. Now if the pastry cracks, it doesn't matter in the least, because you just patch it once it's in the tin. So with that rolled, I'm actually going to roll that onto my rolling pin like that, and then I'm going to drop that into the tin, and as I can see it's cracked there, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to press that in a little bit, and then I'm going to take a piece of this pastry and form it into a little blob so that I can use it to press down into the edge of the tin. And then I'll patch the bits that cracked, just like that. I can see that just there's a crack, so I'm going to just wedge some in. Now actually it's not that important in this case, because we're not going to bake this once we've filled it, so there's nothing going to leak out of it anyway. So with that, like that, I'm going to just take a knife and cut around the edge. And with that, like that, what I'm going to do is to take a fork and I'm going to prick the base all over. This is to stop the pastry from puffing up as we bake it. Just like that. And then I'm going to put my parchment paper into the pastry case. And now I'm going to pour in the baking beans. Like that. And I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for between 10 and 15 minutes, probably about 15 minutes. And then I'll take it out, remove the parchment paper with the baking beans, and put it into the oven again and bake it for a further 10 minutes. Then I'll take it out and I'll come back and show you what we do next. Now while the pastry is blind baking, we'll go on and make the custard. And it's quite simple. So here I have my custard powder, which I'm going to put into a saucepan. And then I'm going to put the sugar in as well. I'm just going to mix those around, and then I'm going to add in just a couple of tablespoons of the milk. And I'm going to mix that around, and as you can see, straight away it starts to go yellow. I want to form this into a smooth paste, and then I'm going to add the remainder of the milk. Stir it around, and I'm actually going to then put that onto the heat, on a medium heat, and I'm going to stir it constantly until it comes to a boil and it begins to thicken. And once it's thickened, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. We then have to let it cool down before we can use it. So the custard is cooked, and I'm going to pour it into a bowl so that it can cool down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just cover the surface with plastic wrap, pressed down onto the surface so that it doesn't form a skin, and then once it cools it will become even thicker and will be perfect for filling our tart. So the pastry has come out of the oven after the first bake for the blind baking, and I've removed the baking beans and the parchment paper, and I'm going to put this back into the oven to bake for a further 10 minutes so that the pastry is fully baked, and then it'd be ready to take our filling. So the pastry baked, and I took it out of the oven, and I actually used a knife to cut the edge off, and I rather wish I hadn't done that, but I did, so that's what I've got. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some jam, raspberry jam this is, and I'm going to spread it over the base of the pastry. And that's probably about 3 tablespoons, and it will, you could warm it up to soften it if you wanted to, but it doesn't need it. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is take about half of my coconut. Now you don't, this is the bit that I said you don't have to do if you don't want to, but it just gets a little bit more coconut into the tart, and sprinkle it over like that. And then my custard isn't cooled down completely, but it will be fine. And what I'm going to do is to take that and I'm going to spread it over the pie. Now I made mine very thick because I want it to set. Over the tart, I should say, not the pie. So I'll just spread that and level it off. And with that spread like that, I'm simply going to take the remaining coconut and sprinkle that over the top. Like that, and then I'm just going to tap it down so that most of it sticks, and that's our tart. I'm just going to move it so that I can remove the base like that. And that's ready to taste. So I'll just cut a piece out. and it will set firmer once it's completely cooled, but because I want to taste it now, that will be good enough. And that's the tart. That is very, very good indeed. Mine's still slightly warm, but like that, it's lovely. So as I say, we used to have this as one of the desserts on our school dinners when I was a child, and somebody did request that I made it. So I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, which will take you to this recipe, and I'll put a link to it below the video as well. And then I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.